Hey guys, how's it going? This has been a long time coming because today's figure has been mentioned in Fate for ages now. I just never really got around to covering him. Today we are going back to the island of rain and fog that is Britain to talk about the Mad King Vortigern. Normally, I don't cover characters that are not in FGO because at that point I may as well just be doing purist history stuff. However, Vort has been around in Fate for a very long time and is technically in the game through a couple of different means, so I'm going to allow it. Also, this is going to be an amazing foundation for what will eventually be the King Arthur episode, because this kind of sets the stage for everything that he was going to have to deal with. So, while we will be discussing Old Vorti in this episode, I lied to you, and now you're going to be learning about the foundation of medieval Britannia. Let's start with discussing a term used when talking about this time period that I feel like a lot of people recognize but don't really know what it is: Anglo-Saxon. The Angli and the Saxons were both tribes that existed on mainland Europe and would eventually migrate over to England, after which they would also begin sacking the towns and villages of the British Isles. This migration is going to be very important later on, so remember that. For now though, just know that they are non-British people who are attempting to expand their territory into Britain. Now, while I wish I could give you a rundown of Vortigern's early life and things of that nature, they just simply don't exist. Or rather, historically they don't really exist. Vortigern is somewhat split between the real tyrant king of Britain and the pseudo-historical one. According to Geoffrey of Monmouth, the scholarly cleric who is most notable for his writings on King Arthur, around the 5th century the Romans who had been occupying the land for almost 500 years decided to leave. This is due in large part to Rome no longer being the empire it once was, and as such they needed to reallocate their resources elsewhere. The native British were then pretty much immediately attacked by the Picts from the north, the Scots from the south, and the Danes from the east. The British themselves, while not entirely defenseless, had much less manpower as a bulk of their military forces had been taken by the Romans as they left. The British sent letters requesting assistance but received nothing, and thus were left to their fates. The leader at the time was a normal British soldier who had been declared emperor named Constantinus III, who then died, leaving the throne to his eldest son, Constans. Constan's siblings were Aurelius Ambrosius and Uther. Vortigern was a warlord who offered his service to assist Constans as an advisor and used the new emperor to his own benefit. Because of this political puppetry, Constans himself was an unpopular ruler, and Vortigern eventually had him killed by the invading Picts, and claimed the throne for himself as the siblings of Constans were too young at the time. Vortigern then makes the ill-fated decision of inviting the Saxons to come settle on the eastern coast of Britain. He strikes a deal with their leader, the brothers Hengst and Horsa, that they can reside in this land if they will work for him as a military force to keep control. They initially agreed, and Vortigern marries one of their sisters to kind of seal the deal. However, the brothers realized that Vortigern and his forces were not strong enough to prevent them from taking everything for themselves, and started an uprising against him. At some point during this uprising, Vortigern wished to construct a tower that for some reason would collapse as it was about to be completed every single time. Vortigern was advised that he needed the blood of a fatherless child to reinforce the walls of the tower, leading him to bring Aurelius to be sacrificed. Instead, Aurelius informed him that below the tower was a lake, and when he took Vortigern there, they discovered a white and red dragon fighting in the lake. This was symbolized at the time as the British fighting off the Saxon invasion. Here's the thing though, this Aurelius was supposedly actually the wizard Merlin, and the two dragons were also symbolized as being Vortigern and the future king of England, Uther. The real Aurelius and Uther find Vortigern, who had lost most of his power at the time, and kill him, bringing an end to his reign and crowning Aurelius as king of the Britons. Aurelius and Uther fight valiantly against the Saxons, but Aurelius becomes sick, leading him to become bedridden, where an assassin posing as a doctor then poisons him. At the moment of his death, Merlin sees a comet with a dragon's head streak across the night sky and informs Uther that his brother has died. However, he also encourages him, saying that they have been given a sign of Uther's victory. However, he would need to change his last name to Pendragon, meaning dragon's head. Uther does this and soon finds himself successful in repelling the Saxon invaders with the help of the Duke of Cornwall. The pair then celebrate with each other, thankful for an end to the bloody conflict. However, Uther then falls in love with the Duke's wife, Igerna, and through the power of Merlin's cock magic is given the opportunity to lie with her, thus producing an heir, Arthur. Uther then goes to war with Cornwall for having fallen in love with Igerna. Uther eventually kills the Duke, steals his wife, and goes back to war against the Saxons, who have attempted to rebel once more. Uther is successful in repelling them again, but is poisoned in the process, leaving the throne vacant and leading to Merlin creating the Sword in the Stone, which we will pick back up on at a later time. To summarize, because Vortigern was so power-hungry, he led to the deaths of thousands and doomed the land of Britain to be sieged by invaders for decades, which would eventually lead to the birth of the world's most famous king, King Arthur. That's the pseudo-history of Vortigern that paints him exclusively as a villainous character who did everything that he did for the sake of grabbing power. The real Vortigern, while not exactly an amazing leader, is a little bit more pitiable. See, Geoffrey of Monmouth wrote his Histories of Britain, the Historia Regum Britannia, around 1136. 700 years earlier, a different scholar, a man simply named Gildas, wrote of Vortigern. He described him as a usurper king who was unlucky. He had invited the Angli and the Saxons to settle in Britain, a decision that was not made solely by him, but rather one made after consulting a council who appeared to have agreed with him. This council is believed to have been made up of city heads, village leaders, and officials, and the decision was made after much discussion. The Saxons came over on 3 warships and settled in the eastern end of the island, and as time went on, they invited more of their countrymen to join them. With this increase in their population, the Saxons requested more resources from the crown to be allocated to their settlement, which was refused by Vortigern and the council. This caused the Saxons to take up arms and break the treaty that they held. The Saxons then ransacked the villages and cities around the area, and the approval of Vortigern plummeted because of him bringing unneeded problems to the land with no means of controlling them. Now, Gildas never explicitly names Vortigern in this, simply calling him the usurper or the unlucky king. However, his name does align with a handful of sources, though ones that come after the time of Gildas. The scholar Bede in the 8th century is the earliest record of this unlucky king having the name Vortigern, and his account is essentially the same as Gildas, but with more details and a slightly different tone. A stone cross, now a pillar, erected in the 9th century in Wales, known as the Pillar of Eliseg, has details of Vortigern's life carved into it that align with Gildas's account, confirming that it is the same person. It also gives him some connection to the throne of Wales as a possible heir, so the most probable account of Vortigern in the real world would be Gildas's account. Vortigern was likely an influential member of the royal court, and through violent means took it for himself, which was far from uncommon at the time. He then invited the Saxons to Britain, which he proved to be unable to properly control, leading to his loss of power and eventual killing by the sons of Constans. The rest falls into the war against the Saxons that would eventually bring King Arthur into existence. Vortigern, whether doing so through hubris or malice, invited a calamity upon the British Isles when they were already in a weakened state, and because of his own misfortune, countless had to die. I am neglecting to talk about the play Vortigern and Rowena because it is essentially just a dramatic retelling of Geoffrey of Monmouth's tale, except that Vortigern isn't killed at the end. The interesting thing about that play is that it was a forgery made by a man named William Ireland who claimed that it was a lost work of Shakespeare. Whether this has any bearing on any potential Vortigerns we may get in FGO, I'll leave for the future. But that is the Tyrant King Vortigern in the books. Thank you all so much for watching, I really do appreciate it. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. If there is a character that you would like me to cover in the future, let me know down there as well. Check my links for my Discord, Twitch, and Twitter. But for now guys, keep your chin up, peace.